Welcome to the Run Your Day podcast, where our goal is to expand your focus and perspective on life. This is your daily dose of motivation, mindfulness, and so much more. And now, here to help you take your day back, your host, Dan Hafner.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome into the Run Your Day podcast. Very special episode with you guys today. This is Dan Hafner joining you here, accompanied by a man by the name of Will Wadsworth. How you doing today, Will?
Hey, great. Thanks, Dan. Thanks very much for having me.
Absolutely, man. It's a pleasure. So today's topic is this. It takes guts to go all in. As always, thank you all for joining. Really appreciate you guys coming on today. William Wadsworth is the founder of Exam Study Expert, an education blog and soon a podcast, which shares study tips and learning techniques for students to help them get better grades. He has a degree in psychology from Cambridge University and has recently took the plunge of leaving a $100,000 a year career in corporate strategy to grow an education business pretty much from scratch. I only have one thing to say to you, Will. You, my friend, are a badass.
Well, thanks very much. It's an exciting time. Some nerves with it too, of course, but really excited for what's to come.
Good, man. So hey, just take a minute and introduce everyone to the Run Your Day podcast and tell us a little bit about your background.
Thanks very much. So, as you say, a few weeks ago, I left my full-time job after 7 years to found a new blog called examstudyexpert.com, which, as you say, is all about teaching high school and college students the study techniques and strategies they're going to need to get the best grades. So look, I'm all about kind of the science of memory, the psychology of motivation and focus, as well as the kind of art of writing really well and great exam technique. In terms of the business, look, I mean, it's a couple of months old. We've got a really long road ahead, but feedback so far has been super encouraging. I went against the grain of building up your blog into a successful, well monetized side hustle before taking the plunge. I just felt that road was going to be so long because the day job was pretty intense. It's pretty hard to find the time and energy to really give the business what it needed outside of that. And I had pretty good confidence that if I could devote enough time and energy, I was going to be able to get it to quite an interesting place relatively soon. So I saved up a bit of a buffer to tide me through while the business isn't bringing in much in the way of revenue. And took the plunge into kind of really building it up as quickly as possible. There's a few kind of interesting hacks I'm hoping to use to kind of really leapfrog to kind of being a respectably sized business as quickly as possible. Perhaps we'll get into those a bit later on.
That is so awesome, man. I mean, there's a few things I took from that I really want to talk about with my viewers here. And the first question that came to my mind was this. You said you were at this job for 7 years. Okay, so probably was pretty stable. I mean, plus north of six figures is a very comfortable living, no matter where you are. What compelled you? What were the thoughts and feelings inside of your mind and inside of your heart that really made you know, like, this is the path I need to follow and this is the leap I need to make, despite what happens? Like, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. A lot of people, when they ask me about it, friends, family, they're kind of looking for the push factors. They're looking for what I didn't like about my job. Was I unhappy? Was it not satisfying? And the answer is kind of no. Like, you're right. I was it was pretty stable. I was well settled. The work was interesting. It was fun. It was a good place to work. I had great colleagues around me. So why the hell pack it in? The answer is in the pull factors. What was pulling me, as you say, compelling me towards the new business. Look, I mean, I had this idea about students not using optimum study techniques for at least 10 years. It goes well back into my own time as a student. And as the years have gone by, I've stayed in education. So around the day job, I was doing quite a lot of tutoring, so private tutoring for clients. And so I was doing that and kind of seeing what students were doing, and I was reading a lot as well. So I became pretty well read in the kind of science of all this. And the more I worked with students and the more I read, the more I just thought, there's such a gap here. It was almost like I sometimes use the analogy that everyone's driving around in horse and cart. And someone's already invented the car, and you're thinking, God, we've got to bring this new invention. We've got to bring the car to the world, and everyone's going to get where they're going so much faster and have so much more fun on the journey. So there's a few there's a kind of handful of scientists out there that are just sort of trying to communicate some of this stuff, but it's very much on the side of their day job, which is kind of actually doing the research. I hadn't really found anyone who'd made it their core mission to really kind of communicate this stuff and get it into the hands of people. So that just felt like such a big, not only kind of commercial opportunity, but also just a kind of opportunity to help make sort of society better and help touch so many lives, and help so many more people kind of get to where they want to be in academia, and ultimately unlock doors later in life in terms of kind of the careers and the jobs and the sorts of lifestyles people want to aspire to.
That's awesome. And I think that's one thing that I've noticed, at least in my own life, and I've definitely posted about on this podcast before, is that that feeling of being pulled towards something, right? Like I think that is something that not a lot of people understand until they actually undergo it, right? Like when it's one thing to, it's like, like I like your analogy of the cart and the buggy, right? Like you're like, you recognize this gap of like, oh man, like if I could fill this, it would change so many people's lives, right? But then using a horse as well, like it's so much easier to pull a horse to water to drink instead of pushing it, right? Like it's so much easier to be pulled along for something and lead somebody towards something than to just push, because people push back.
Sure.
So I really think that's interesting what you hit on there. So that's really, really cool. So the next question that I really want you to speak on, and I really like what you do. I like your idea. I think it's really, really awesome. But I really want to talk about like you personally. So, like was there any kind of self-development or, self-realization, self-truths that you found about yourself or you are finding about yourself as you go through this process, as far as getting in new habits, getting in new mindsets, can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll probably sort of take you back about 18 months or so. That was, I've had the ideas about, wanting to communicate this stuff for much longer than that, as I was saying, probably the best part of a decade. But really kind of the idea of turning it into a business has really been in the last 18 months. And it's actually exactly when I got into podcasting and listening to podcasts that my world really changed. Both my kind of social circle, the people around me, and my kind of professional circle, that my fellow workers at my company, no one was talking about building blogs, about doing side hustles, about sort of being entrepreneurial online. And so, I had no kind of reference points. I had no stories to motivate me. I had no idea of the sorts of skills involved. I had no idea of the opportunity that was out there. Just because no one in my immediate circle was talking about it. What I loved about podcast, being a podcast listener, and this is why I think the medium's so fantastic and why I'm so excited to be, talking to your listeners, is you get to hear people's stories from way outside your own circles, and opens your mind up to these new ways of thinking and these new opportunities that you just never have come across for a lot of people in your own kind of day-to-day lives. So I listen to a lot of the big podcasts on sort of blogging and on online marketing and all the rest of it, and was kind of fascinating to learn a lot of these skills. And that kind of gradually gave me the confidence that, I think I can do this too. And I think I know the right niche. And for me, the niche was obvious, that I wanted to go after the kind of content I wanted to share. The sort of transition into deciding to take the plunge and walk out the door was ultimately kind of easy. I've been sort of trying to get the business going. I've been trying to start writing alongside the full-time job, but really, as I was saying before, it was really hard for me to find the time and energy to give both halves of my life the attention they needed. So switched into full-time work on the new business. And I thought that was going to be a complete change in terms of, habits and sort of routines and, what it would feel like day to day. I thought it would take a while to get used to, but it was surprising how quickly I adapted. I try and keep fairly similar hours to what I was doing before. So, I work hard during the day, and I don't work into the evening usually. I think getting that balance between the two halves of your life is important. I plan my week at the start of the week. I print off a weekly planner each week, and kind of figure out what my priorities are that week, and then fit them into different time boxes, so I know exactly what I'm going to achieve, going to deliver that week. It's still early days. I'm still refining that process a little bit, and I've certainly found myself kind of playing catch up a little bit at the weekend sometimes. But I think it's all a kind of learning process. And I think for me, the kind of power of a good daily routine has been really, really important. It's kind of regular time. You get up when you start, making sure you make good headway early on, kind of build that momentum. And I always getting some exercise in as well. So I go for a run at lunch, and that works pretty well for me, getting the heart moving and getting the energy levels up. So it's kind of all about, it's kind of building that routine and those habits, and also learning how to sort of manage your time and energy, and getting a better sense for what you can achieve in a certain amount of time.
That's awesome. That's very cool. So yeah, there's 3 things I wrote down here that I really wanted to highlight. And the first part, when you said that there were no one really else around you that was talking about the same types of things, right? And I think that it really is, there's this concept of collision, right? Like colliding with someone instead of just talking and debating. And I think it's really interesting when you get into this habit of colliding with either, other employees or a spouse, or any kind of relationship that you have, because you have differing viewpoints, differing worlds that go at it, and there's creation that is born out of that, right? So I really think that was really neat for you to hear, because I've been in similar situations myself, and I also understand this game of insanity that you had, when you were at a full-time job doing something, but you were also being pulled into doing other things on the side in the evening and the weekends, in order to be like, oh, well, I want to build up a following and get this going before I actually go all in on it, right? and I've been in that world as well. And it really is, I've come to realize it's a game of insanity. Like you said, you need to be able to do something during the day and then have a balance at night and be able to bring in other areas of your life that are important, right? And the last thing was the power of a routine. And I'm really glad that you said that, because actually that's one thing that I've been getting into lately is coaching people on morning routines. And that was the power of a morning routine changed my entire life. Absolutely changed my entire life. And that is one thing that I'm trying to pay forward and do as a little side business on the side as well. And I have other information on that for my listeners as well here. But I really like to hear you say that the power of a routine is so incredibly critical to actually achieving what you want to do and planning out and discipline. So that's for sure. That's really awesome. So I want to backtrack here a little bit and really talk about more specifically about what you're doing here. And this concept of, like you said, when you going back to the horse and the buggy thing, you recognize this gap, right? And you almost saw what was invisible. Like you saw something that was a problem that other people didn't recognize. And then you also were able to kind of use your expertise and your knowledge to position yourself as an expert in this area, right? So what was that process that you went through in order to be able to, quote unquote, see the invisible?
It's a good question. I think I was lucky in many ways to have sort of found this this area which was this set of skills, this kind of toolbox of skills, which was incredibly helpful for me in my own life, and then lucky because and then doubly lucky because I was sort of able to through what I was reading and through the kind of work I was doing with students, it gradually dawned on me that actually this is a bigger problem than just me. This is an issue that kind of everyone has, and I think a lot of people could be helped. So I think for me it was it was both kind of working hard to in the first place, it's sort of working hard to optimize what I was doing and kind of perfect my craft in something that I was passionate about and kind of knew a bit about. And then it was about kind of having eyes open to the world and kind of going through life with a kind of head up mentality and being able to look for that validation that actually this is a big enough problem that maybe I can do something. Maybe there's a business in it.
Okay, that's awesome. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. So, all right. So the next set of questions I have, I'm going to get a little real with you. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. All right. So the first question is this: what is the big, hairy goal that you are hunting down for your business?
So at the moment, there's a couple of big sort of medium-term things I'm working towards. So I mentioned the podcast. So I've got my own podcast in the preparation stage, and I'm looking for 10,000 downloads an episode within the sort of first 3 or 4 months. The work I've been doing on the blog, great, really good feedback. But I think because the content I talk about tends to be quite deep, I've already had people say, it'd be so good if I could sort of listen to this rather than have to read it. So I'm kind of really excited about doing podcasting. I think it's going to be my number one medium to reach audience in. So that's really, really critical. And then the second is a research project. So I'm in the process of surveying about 100,000 UK secondary school students on how they study and how they learn. That's partly for kind of scientific reasons, partly for scientific discovery and to validate some of the hypotheses I have around this. But there's potentially a huge PR win here as well. I've partnered with one of the leading 3 UK news organisations for it. And assuming the research goes well, and assuming it tells some interesting findings, that could be a really big piece of sort of media exposure and be, potentially transformational to the business from so many angles. Brand, credibility, validation, exposure. So very excited about both of those things.
Okay, that's actually I really really like that. I wrote that down for my personal ambitions here as far as a research project, because I really like what you said about validating your hypotheses, building up credibility, getting visibility. That's awesome. I really really like that. So okay,
I think just to build on that, if I can, the world of content marketing is so competitive now in whatever niche you're in, mine as much as anyone else's. And I think a really good way to stand out is coming up with truly original research for yourself. And some of the, if I'm learning about blogging, some of the writers about blogging that I most respect and kind of have engaged with most have done amazing pieces of original research themselves about what it takes to become what it takes to build a great blog, and kind of the specific aspects of SEO you need to do really well, and kind of backing that all up with their own data. So I think whatever niche you're in, if there's a way you can do something original, that can be incredibly powerful, not just for your brand, but also because people are going to talk about it, people are going to want to link to it, people are going to want to share it with their friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so and I like your goal of starting a podcast. Obviously, I'm a big fan of that as well. 10,000 plays per episode is audacious. I like that.
It's big and hairy.
That's some serious stuff. Okay, so within those 2 goals, how are you measuring your success? Like, when will you be able to look back and be like, yes, I accomplished that?
And the podcast has kind of got its own metric built in, I guess. The downloads per app. As a sort of side goal to that, building the mailing list as well. So building those kind of ultra engaged audience members as well. I currently have around 50, which is very exciting. But looking to grow that considerably as well. And then I guess the other thing, which is kind of related to both the podcast and the research project, is increasing the website traffic as well. So growing that traffic considerably too. And then I think kind of beyond those sort of more quantifiable operating metrics, there's the slightly less tangible success outcomes. So it's people reaching out and saying, thank you, man. This helped. And this delivered. Your content delivered for me, and it made a difference to me in my life, and what I'm trying to do. And I think once those messages start coming through, that's when I really know that what I'm doing is resonating, and what I'm doing is achieving its goals.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So, okay. Now, I guess I just only have, one more question for you is, how long till you, well, let me rephrase this. How long do you really have, if, like you said, you jumped out of your job. So, what is your timeline? Is there like a hard, month coming up here, or a year when you're going to be like, hey, like, if this doesn't work, I'm going to have to go back and do something? Or will there be a certain metric that you can hit when like, this is something sustainable?
Yeah, it's a great question. And one I sort of wrestle with and continue to wrestle with. The way the sort of, you know, in my industry of education, most of the world kind of works on an annual cycle, and peak of exam fever tends to be around April, May, June. So from January through to June, that effectively gives me 6 months. That sort of first run into the kind of annual peak of exam fever. If I'm not building momentum and getting traction and delivering on some of the operating metrics we talked about in that time, sort of 6 months in, then I know that, you know, either I'm doing something wrong, and if I've got a completely different approach to try, then I can maybe give it one more go next year. Or if I'm kind of out of ideas, then I know that, you know, I've given it my best shot. It hasn't worked. So I'd say 6 months is the kind of critical window for me to make or break.
Feels good to be to kind of see it as a real thing.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah. It's that combination of
awesome.
you know, excitement at finally doing what you've been thinking about and talking about for so many years, and making it, and you know, building something up and making it happen, but also you know, that also those kind of nerves associated with, well, you know, I built up these expectations, I've got to deliver on it, I've got to see it through.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you one thing. I mean, I get those feelings. Like I feel those every single day as well. And I haven't even taken the actual step that you have taken. And I think by you, just the sheer act of you doing that, even though you said it was easier than you thought it was going to be, that took some guts. Like that shows not only me, but the people that you're going to work with, either your future clients, that you're committed. Like you did something despite what other people told you, despite your own inner thoughts, your own reservations of something, and you did it, and you're doing it every day. And I think if you get into a spot where you're finding yourself not performing well or not getting the results that you want, remember that. Like remember
Sure.
that in the back of your mind.
Sure. No, that's amazing. 100%. I'll kind of tell you one thing, Dan, just building on that. I mean, I sort of said taking the plunge was a little easier than I'd thought. It just felt like just the right thing to do. And the kind of getting into the routine and the new lifestyle, you know, again, perhaps a little bit more natural than I'd feared. The hardest thing, honestly, has been because what I'm doing is currently so small. It's got such a long way to grow. You're very, very sensitive to signals of success or failure. So, you know, if you publish an article 1 week and it does really well, that's great. The next week, if it doesn't land so well, you know, it doesn't kind of get the traffic you think it deserved, or, you know, doesn't get the kind of social attention you were hoping for, you know, that's a disappointment. And for me, it's been crucial to kind of take that up, to be able to kind of develop the thick skinness to be able to take those on the chin and kind of continue to be productive and get on with the next thing, regardless.
Yeah, I completely get what you're saying. When I first did this podcast, I had like two listeners, like 2 plays every day. And I know it was my mom and my sister. So, you know, to get it to where it is now, I completely understand, because, you know, you're always checking like, oh, did this method work? Did this, what I talk about this day work? Or like this one really took off. So I get it, man. That's awesome. So, all right, I guess we'll start wrapping it up here. I'll give you one last chance here to, you know, give your plug, tell the listeners where they can find you and how you can benefit them.
Oh, sure. Thanks. I mean, the best place is the blog, examstudyexpert.com. Even if you're not into to sort of studying, I've been writing quite a lot about mindset recently. So the kind of motivation to study, and also kind of how to stay focused and productive, which could be interesting to some of your listeners. But if you are kind of one of those people that's in education, or perhaps you're a parent, you're very welcome to join me on the mailing list. It's where I give away my best advice and a lot of free resources. That's examstudyexpert.com/join. And I'm also fairly active on Twitter at examstudyexpert.
Okay, awesome. Well, that is going to be a wrap for today's show. I will go ahead and include the links for the site and his Twitter handle in the notes section of the show here today. Overall, this has been awesome. When I first heard Will's story and what he told me he wanted to come on and talk about, I was very, very excited, especially the whole headline of quit a $100,000 plus job to do my own thing. And I was like, oh, we got to get him on the show right away. So it's been awesome. I hope you guys got a lot of value out of this. My main takeaway is this. It's just the title. It takes guts to go all in. And despite all the sensitivity to success and failure, despite all the things other people will say, despite the roadblocks that you come across, just keep going. Just keep going and stay true to your purpose and who you are and what you're doing, and things will work out. So that's going to be a wrap for today. Thank you, Will, again for joining. And that's going to be a wrap. As always, thank you all for joining. This is Dan Hafner signing off the Run Your Day podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Run Your Day podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, feel free to share today's show with friends and family. Until next time, have a great day.